The Rera Act has been a real game changer for the industry. Now, let me start off by first thanking the Mahi chairperson, the whole Mahi team for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. Also, Rajan Bandelkar. Incidentally, I must share this with you that Maharashtra Rera, popularly known as Maharera, was the first Rera which became operational on the midnight of 30th April 2017. And I think you are not aware that the first person who made the application for a registration of his project under Rera was your President Rajan Bandelkar, exactly at 12:52 in the midnight. And he is also the first person to receive the first registration of a registered project of Rera on the morning of May 1st, 2017. So Rajan is not here. I think he would have loved to hear this anecdote. But then this is something which I thought that this is how I had seen the commitment of people who were there in the industry, who were welcoming an act, because it was oft repeated by very many that this is an act which is going to strangulate the industry, some perception within the industry players, but actually that did not happen. And though the act says that it is meant for consumer protection, it is actually an act which helps all stakeholders in the industry. So with this brief background, let me now move ahead. We have been talking since morning and you are all aware, but then still, at the cost of repetition, I must reiterate that all of you are stakeholders in such an important sector, which is the real estate sector. The contribution to the GDP, the workforce that is employed in this sector, second only to agriculture, the 250 plus industries, cement, steel and so on and so forth, which are all dependent on this industry. And this fourth point, most important, as to what importance every individual in this country attaches to real estate. Close to 80% of the total household asset is held in real estate. So if you do not have a home, you are looking for the first home. If you have the first home, you are also looking for the second home as an investment opportunity. In fact, today morning only I read an article in the Mint which was saying that in this scenario where whoever has little surplus income to invest, he is now wondering, should I put it in mutual fund or because gold and fixed deposits are out. So should I put it in the real estate? And the thing is coming back that yes, this is the perception. We need to put it there because that is something which is tangible and it will remain. So that's how it is. So therefore the demand for housing is continuing to grow. It will continue to grow. And therefore that importance of this sector will also continue to grow. We are saying that more than 50% of the population by 2050 will be in the urban areas. And in the urban areas, when people move to urban areas, it is a developer making a real estate development is what people look at. Because if you have your own land in your own rural outfit, you are actually building your own home. But then self-made homes are not possible when a person moves to an urban area. And therefore, continuously this sector will grow through development by real estate developers, not only in ownership housing, of course, also in rental housing. Now, let me briefly touch upon as to what was pre-Rera. We should not lose track of this because this is what was pre-Rera. Rajan in the morning mentioned that 40 years back when he entered into this business, they were known as Thekedar. So Thekedar or maybe a builder in a derogatory manner is how this layers of this industry were referred to. But it will not be so after the Rera has come in. Now, some of the reasons why it was being referred to, I have just tried to bring out here. Information asymmetry. Now, this is one sector where a buyer is trying to put in his life savings into buying this asset. And he does not get information as to how his asset is getting developed. And it is unique. It is not like any other buy that a person does. This is a place where the buyer is putting in money in bits and pieces and the construction accordingly goes ahead. So it is his money which is making the project, bringing it to fruition. And there is complete information asymmetry. The person doesn't come to know as to what is happening with his money. It is also has been oft repeated and said, also in just pre-lunch session we found that there was diversion of fund. Not always with a maybe ulterior motive, but then diversion of fund because he wanted to expand the business, money picked up for a particular project is being used for some other project. So that also led to the point that is mentioned in my last line is led to delays in the project. What the gentleman was mentioning is that inefficiency was being rewarded, and therefore the self-rewarding system went on going and projects did not get completed. Now this reason of having no information being passed on to the buyers, the financial indiscipline of money is getting diverted and projects not getting completed, documents which are booking letters or agreements for sale being lopsided, being one-sided in the favor of the developers, all this led to a trust deficit. And a trust deficit, and in an environment where the buyer is trying to buy something from his life savings, is just not a sustainable situation. We talked about sustainability from the point of view of environment, but this sustainability, where you are depending on that money which will gradually help you to complete your project, and the person doesn't trust you, is something that one cannot live with. And therefore, this had to be tackled. It took 70 years, all right, but then in the 70th year, we had an act. The act did try to bring in the various clauses that are there, which I'll not run you through that, but then I'll certainly tell you what I look upon as the act as the 5 key pillars of this act. The 5 key pillars is first financial discipline, because if there was indiscipline, if there was diversion of fund, there needed to be certain clauses by which monies for a particular project must be utilized for that project through separate dedicated funds to be monitored by professionals like chartered accountants who will oversee whether the money is being utilized properly or not. Transparency, which will tackle the information asymmetry that was there, so that at least there is level playing field. The seller and the buyer are at the same level of information that is to be shared. Information sharing through disclosures, mandatory disclosures. Accountability was brought in, though in fact I keep on saying that the Act should have tried to bring in accountability of all stakeholders. The Act has talked about the developer, the real estate agent, the home buyers, and how they need to be accountable when this whole system is operating. But I think there are many more players who should have been held accountable under the Act, and we hope that in days to come, that also will get tackled. Compliance, because non-compliance is penalized, and therefore there has to be fear that we must comply with the provisions of the Act. Customer centricity, as I mentioned, on the face of the Act, it says that there have been problems, we have faced problems over the years. This is going to tackle by having a customer centricity. And this is expected also from developers, that they should approach a project with a customer centricity in their mind. And speedy grievance redressal. If a person has a problem, then the problem has to get resolved in a time frame. If that doesn't happen, then again the trust deficit continues to widen. Now, with these 5 pillars, I look upon this Act which tries to usher in what I say is the era of 3 T's. The first T, the most important, is transparency, or I would say all the three T's are important. Transparency, trust, and time. Transparency, as I mentioned, that it has to remove the information asymmetry and various opaque practices that if you are not sharing information with your buyers, with online disclosures which will be available in public domain, which will also empower citizens, because that empowering of citizens was necessary, and there cannot be anything more empowering than information that is made available to the buyers. Trust, that trust deficit which had grown over the years had to be bridged, and therefore how do you bridge trust deficit? Now it can be certainly bridged by having a grievance redressal system, a quasi-judicial one which is talked about in the section 31 of the Act, but then we hit upon a section 32G, a provision in the Act, a small subsection, which talked about why should you not attempt conciliation in trying to resolve disputes. And that turned out to be that 80% of the cases, 4 out of 5, people who have problems they are willing to come across, talk to the other side, and they are willing to settle the matter. Settle is not a compromise. Settle the matter where each one understands the other's point of view and says, yes, we will resolve it in this manner. But that I felt was the best thing that could have been possible under the Rera Act. And I feel that if one has to talk about the future of Rera as to where we should take it forward, I feel that that should become the primary focus of a dispute resolution. Should not be an alternate dispute resolution, which will be, if you fail to go there, then you come here. The first thing that you should attempt is try and do a conciliation and resolve it. I think Tara is a conciliator, Rajan is a very good conciliator. They have all great experiences, and when they share with you, you will be amazed to find that when the conciliation begins, a person comes with all types of grievances, and later on, he is willing or she is willing to sit across to see how they can resolve it. Timely completion project, I have always said that this is the ultimate thing that Rera is trying to achieve. That if it is asking for a time within which you are supposed to complete the project, then you have to see that you stick to that stipulated time and complete the project. So these three things, I think, as and when we go ahead, we follow these three things, that will bring the total change as to how the ठेकेदार or the builder of the yesteryears will now be looked upon as the entrepreneur or the industrialist. We have said that this real estate is an industry, but you should get the status or the stature of an industrialist. That will come when in fact these things can be inculcated in the work culture. Now, I keep on saying that with the bringing in of the Act, what needs to be done is that the sector has to become more professional in its approach. Now, one thing you must understand that this sector is run by professionals. If I run you through all these things, the architects, the landscape architects, civil engineers, the urban planners, the market consultants, the IT professionals, the legal professionals, the environmental consultants, the financial wizards, and various other general contractors, subcontractors, each one of them is supposed to be a professional. So the person at the helm of affairs who is managing each one of them has to be a professional. And that is what will bring in professionals in the sector. Now, as I was mentioning briefly in the morning, out of all these sectors that I am talking about, which come together to make a project, conceiving of the project to the delivery of the home to the ultimate buyer, all these people when they are working, if you look across all these fields, it is most of the fields where women have excelled, or ladies have excelled, are maybe majority of these fields. And therefore one feels that if I say that the reality woman has to become the catalyst when we are talking about the dreams and the vision of the real estate sector in the future, I think I am not off the mark. Now, what has happened, the impact of Rera in these last 5 years, is that professionalism is growing. There are people who are understanding that if I actually need to survive in this sector, I have to be more professional in my approach. My trust will be built on reputation and consumer confidence. And consumer confidence will come when in fact the reputation, which takes time to build, will be built if I do all those things. If I am totally transparent in my approach, if I do timely completion of my project, and if I do everything that builds trust. Now, I have given certain percentages here which show that things are moving towards the right direction, but then this has to need further improvement. 76% Rera-aware consumers are very clear that they will buy only Rera properties in the future. That means general people who are buying properties are now aware that there is something called Rera and a Rera registration. Though I would feel that this awareness level has to be further increased and people have to be made further aware as to what exactly Rera is and how they should try and test a project from the point of view of whether it is something where I can go ahead and invest a property which is worth investing or not. 60% or more consumers across the survey states are more likely to invest in a Rera project. 50% consumers believe that loan approvals are faster. So financial institutions also look upon the Rera registered properties to see that yes, I can now go ahead and keep my money here. To my surprise, when I was sharing the Maharashtra Rera, I found that projects which are under the exemption category, that they do not require Rera registration, also were coming forward to say that please register my project. because this will help me in getting my loan approval from the bank and financial institution and NBFC. So essentially, if these stakeholders, which are important, they provide the money, they provide the expertise, if they also feel that yes, this is where the industry should move, then I think we are moving in the right direction. Again, 64% developers are satisfied with Rera. So it's not that it's only the consumers who are feeling happy. Majority of the developers also feel that yes, it is helping increase the credibility of among buyers. 5 out of 6 consumers seeking grievance redressal through Rera. Even the other day, Supreme Court in its latest order have said that when it comes to Rera and SARFAESI, then if a SARFAESI Act to a certain extent has run and taken possession of the property, the financial institution has taken possession of the property, he would be deemed to be a promoter, and that promoter will come under the provisions of the Rera Act. Now that has been said because in the Act, as I mentioned, all stakeholders are not brought under the ambit of the Act. So financial institutions, if they're already there in the ambit of Rera Act, as in the IBC, it was only the financial institutions who were there, the creditors, but later on the home buyers were brought in as creditors. Similarly, I think amendments may be required in the Rera Act to bring in financial institutions also, so that